A land dispute on the Piapot First Nation in Saskatchewan has escalated into threats and confrontations.
She drove right in front of the sprayer, and our guy on the sprayer, he could not stop, so he went into her.
Non-Indigenous tenant farmers are caught in the middle as a divided community grapples for control of the land.
Chief and Council have had threats, many threats, violent threats.
For decades, a few dozen band members have been renting out land that's owned by the whole community and pocketing millions in profit.
Just a handful of people are benefiting from the lands when it should be the whole nation.
My family is 100 members. None of us, except for one sister, has land.
Well over $60 million in that 30 years. Lost opportunity.
Now leadership is cracking down and some band members are pushing back.
This is very dangerous. I think we better get out of here before somebody gets hurt.
At the center of it all, a man who agreed to meet with us in this little shack, Roland Crow.
Do I look like I'm a dangerous guy? Huh? Answer me honestly.
Paul Hofer is the farm manager for the Arm River Hutterite colony. Last fall, he agreed to rent a large parcel of land from the Piapot First Nation.
The land was great, ideal land, very nice land.
He didn't realize he was wandering into the midst of a bitter, decades-long land dispute between Piapot's current chief and council and a group calling itself the Treaty Rights Holders.
We have trespassers on our lands here. COP is getting this farmer off our land.
Some members of that group are accused of trying to intimidate non-Indigenous farmers who are renting Piapot's land. The group sometimes posts its activism on Facebook.
They have no lawful legal authority on our lands.
According to court filings, Roland Crow left this voicemail with one farmer renting Piapot land.
There's only one way that anybody will ever take my lands, and that's over my dead body.
Crow sent messages to Hofer as well, and then a convoy of 10 treaty rights holders led by Roland Crow pulled up onto the colony.
It looks like Roland is their king. There's something not right here. There is something not right here. The way that guy looks and the way he speaks and everything. All they could tell me is our lane, our lane, our lane. And then I said, okay, if it's your lane, I want some paperwork.
But Crow was not able to provide that because he and his group don't actually own the land. But that hasn't stopped him or the others from profiting off it for 3 decades.
Good morning, Your Honor, Mr. Prime Minister, Premier.
This was Roland Crow 32 years ago at the height of his power and influence. As the chief of the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, he had negotiated a $500 million land claims deal with the federal and provincial governments on behalf of Saskatchewan First Nations. When the treaties were signed more than 100 years ago, many First Nations were not given all the land they were promised.
The page has been turned.
With that money, they could buy land and build for the future.
We know that it's going to turn the lives of our people around.
The Piapot First Nation received more than $20 million to purchase tens of thousands of acres. After losing re-election as chief of the Federation, Crow was elected Piapot's chief. He claimed a large chunk of that community's newly acquired land for himself. He rented it out to farmers and kept the revenue. This arrangement, renting land you don't own, is called a Bakshi agreement, and it's legally invalid. As chief, Crow began to hand out land to other band members, too.
My theory is if you show initiative and you're trying to do something, I think you do everything within your power, which I did, to give those people a chance at life.
In 2005, a CBC TV documentary focused on the anger that was beginning to boil over in the community.
That's not benefiting the whole band. That's benefiting that family, and that family only.
Basically, leadership raped the people. They raped their own people.
In the 20 years since, band members have continued these Bakshi arrangements. People in this community have tried unsuccessfully to stop them.
Every time it was attempted, then some of the handful of landowners would get reelected and put an end to it. And that's why it's never moved forward.
That's a familiar story to Cadmus Delorme.
It's one of the most uncomfortable conversations in almost any First Nation.
When he was elected chief of the Cowessess First Nation in 2016, much of its land was controlled by just a handful of men. One of them was Delorme's own dad.
A non-Indigenous farmer used to come into my late father's house in the spring and fall, and they would have tea, break some bannock my mom made, and a little envelope would be shared.
Delorme and his council decided it was time to end this practice. The dispute ended up in court, but eventually they got it done.
We found a situation and corrected it. Now we have a new compass for the next 50 years to be the biggest farmers in southern Saskatchewan, because we have a real understanding now of how we could utilize our lands collectively.
In 2020, Piapot's new council decided to follow their lead.
We decided at the table the best thing was to bring this revenue back to the band for all the people.
They hired Roland Crow to manage the band's lands.
Now we know we're starting to gain some intelligence about what's happening on our lands.
She learned that 40,000 acres of Piapot's land was controlled by just 45 band members. That's fewer than 2% of Piapot's 2,700 members. The First Nation also missed out on years of per-acre payments from Ottawa. So this is money that was promised to First Nations that managed their own lands. But because of these Bakshi arrangements, Piapot didn't qualify.
Well over $60 million in that 30 years.
Lost.
Lost opportunity. And not only, lost opportunity, but the wealth that could have been generated from those opportunities is also gone.
Land valued at $60 an acre was being rented out for much less.
I found some folks that were leasing the land $5, $10, and folks thought that that was a good price that they were getting.
She signed new agreements with farmers at market value.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But on Piapot, there was almost immediate pushback.
Chief and council have had threats, many threats, violent threats, slander on all of us. I've even had to move my family for safety reasons.
Paul Hofer says his workers were out spraying in May when some of Roland Crow's group showed up.
She would drove right crazy enough right beside the sprayer, and all of a sudden she would duck in front of the sprayer, and our guy on the sprayer, he could not stop, so he went into her.
Roland Crow and others from his group were criminally charged with mischief for illegally blocking the Hutterites' access to the land. A judge ordered the group to stop physically interfering with, threatening, or intimidating those trying to farm the land.
The boys felt this is very dangerous. For safety, we better completely get out. I didn't want our mine workers to be carried out on a stretcher.
We asked for an interview with Crow, and he invited us to this shack, where he and the other treaty rights holders were waiting. The group included Crow's right-hand man, Claude Friday. He has been charged with confining one farmer and assaulting another.
All of Canada and the United States is our traditional land, buddy. You know that, and I know that.
But Roland Crow was clearly the man in charge, and he had no apologies for any decisions he's made about the land. What's the reason for giving the land to individual families?
I'm only going to tell you this once. Self-sufficiency, so we don't have to beg on anybody's door to look after our families. Simple as that, Geoff. Can I get that through? Mm-hmm. Yes or no?
And for those criticizing him, he has this message.
You know where the ones that are want equal share now? You know where they were? They were drunkard than hell on drugs.
He says he's earned the land that he has controlled for decades. According to band records, that's at least 2,240 acres, worth $3 million.
I own it, Geoff. They don't own my land.
Crow turns the tables on Piapot's chief and council, accusing them of corruption, pointing out that they pay themselves up to $330,000 a year.
and they're telling me to share. I would share the income off my land anytime, if things were fair and just.
Crow dismisses the allegations of intimidation or threats.
Do I look like I'm a dangerous guy? Huh? Answer me honestly.
Chief Mark Fox says despite all the conflict, the rental revenue is now flowing into band coffers.
We're helping our elders out. We're helping our youth out. We're helping our housing program out. We got allocated 5 homes. We're going to build 8 homes. 3 extra homes. Why? Because we got land revenue coming.
Former Cowessess Chief Cadmus Delorme says First Nations communities have to tackle this problem head on.
We have our own reconciliation we have to address. This isn't a Western Canadian issue. This is an Indigenous to Indigenous issue. And, as Indigenous people, we are going to address it. It has to happen because it's foundational to us moving forward.